Listen closely, and I'll tell you about the velvet-lined coffin where passion goes to die. There's an old Bavarian legend about a woodcutter who fell in love with his own shadow. Every dawn, he'd chase it westward. Every dusk, he'd pursue it east. The villagers found him decades later, still running, his feet worn to bone, his eyes reflecting nothing but darkness. They say he smiled as he died, finally catching what was never there. This is what Jung saw when he peered into the male psyche and found the anima. Not a muse, not a goddess, but a projection so intoxicating that men would rather be consumed by illusion than face the terror of their own incompleteness. Picture this. A man sits in a bar at 2:47 a.m., nursing his fourth whiskey, scrolling through her Instagram. She hasn't posted in 3 months. He's memorized every photo, every comment, every timestamp. The bartender, a woman with tired eyes who's seen this ritual 1,000 times, doesn't bother asking if he wants another. She knows he's not drinking alcohol. He's drinking absence. The anima, Jung whispered from his tower in Bollingen, is the feminine aspect of the male unconscious. But here's what the old wizard didn't tell you in his sanitized academic papers. She's also a vampire that feeds on worship. A 2024 study from the Journal of Personality Disorders found that men who idealize romantic partners show increased activity in the same brain regions associated with religious ecstasy and cocaine addiction. The researchers called it neurological idolatry. I call it building cathedrals to ghosts. You see, when a man projects his anima onto a woman, he's not falling in love with her. He's falling in love with the parts of himself he's too terrified to own. His tenderness becomes her smile. His creativity becomes her laugh. His capacity for beauty becomes the way she tilts her head when she's thinking. And slowly, imperceptibly, like ivy strangling an oak, she begins to possess everything he refused to claim. I once knew a pianist. Brilliant, they said, until he met her. She didn't even like music, but in his eyes, she was music. He'd play for hours, watching her face for approval that never came. His fingers, once independent and wild, learned to move only in patterns he thought might please her. The music died, note by note, replaced by a hollow performance of what he imagined she wanted to hear. She left him, of course. Not because she was cruel, but because no human can bear the weight of being someone else's entire soul. But here's the grotesque punchline. He kept playing for her absence. Every night, the same songs. To an empty chair, waiting for applause from a woman who had become more real in her absence than she'd ever been in her presence. Tell me, dear listener, have you ever noticed how the people you worship most are always the ones who barely see you? The anima possession is a haunting more intimate than any ghost story. It begins with admiration, ferments into obsession, and crystallizes into a kind of living death where a man exists only as a satellite to his projection. He stops developing his own interests. Why would he need them when she is his interest? He abandons his friends, their voices pale compared to the symphony of her imagined approval. He forgets how to be alone. Solitude becomes a waiting room for her return. There's a word in Portuguese, saudade, for the presence of absence, the weight of what's missing, but anima possession goes deeper. It's the absence of presence, the hollowing out of self until you're nothing but an echo chamber for someone else's imagined desires. Modern dating apps have become anima factories, mass-producing projections at swipe speed. A 2025 study from Stanford found that men spend an average of 7 seconds viewing a profile before deciding to swipe right, but then spend hours constructing elaborate fantasies about matches who never respond. Each unmessaged match becomes a blank canvas for the anima to paint herself upon. She's the one who would finally understand. She's the one who would complete the broken symphony of self. But here's the thing about worshipping projections. They always betray you. Not because they're cruel, but because they're not real. The woman you've turned into a goddess can never live up to the divinity you've projected onto her. She'll have bad breath in the morning. She'll be cruel when she's tired. She'll have her own broken pieces that don't fit neatly into your salvation fantasy. And when the projection shatters, And it always shatters. What's left is worse than loneliness. It's the realization that you've been genuflecting before a mirror, and the God you've been praying to was just your own refused potential, dressed in someone else's face. The possessed man becomes a peculiar creature, simultaneously empty and overflowing, starved and gorged, abandoned and haunted. He walks through the world like a monk who's lost his religion but can't stop praying, going through the motions of devotion to a deity that was never there. Jung's Anima isn't just an archetype. She's a siren calling men to dash themselves against the rocks of their own projections. And the most exquisite torture, the rocks are inside them all along. She sings loudest when you plug your ears. Let me tell you about the summer I learned to breathe underwater. Not literally, though God knows I tried. I mean the summer I discovered that the harder you chase the anima, the faster she transforms into everything you'll never catch. Like trying to hold smoke in your fists or photograph the wind. There's a Japanese folk tale about a fisherman who fell in love with the moon's reflection in the water. Night after night, he'd cast his nets, trying to pull her silver face from the waves. The moon, amused by his devotion, decided to visit him in human form. But when she appeared at his door, flesh and blood and breathing, he didn't recognize her. He was too busy staring at the water, waiting for his projection to surface. This is the siren's paradox. The anima you worship exists only in the distance between desire and possession. Close the gap, and she evaporates like morning dew on a tombstone. I've watched men, brilliant men, broken men, boring men, all perform the same tragic ballet. They meet a woman who sparks something primal, something that tastes like salvation mixed with cyanide. And instead of sitting with that feeling, instead of asking what part of themselves is awakening, they do what men have done since we crawled from caves. They hunt. Texts at 2 a.m. that reek of desperation disguised as casualness. Hey, you up? Translation. I'm drowning in my own emptiness, and I've appointed you my lifeguard. Elaborate schemes to accidentally appear wherever she might be. Social media stalking so intensive the FBI should take notes. But here's where it gets deliciously dark. The more aggressively they pursue, the more she transforms into something impossible to catch. Not because she's playing games, but because the anima feeds on yearning, not having. She's the goddess of almost, the patron saint of what if, the deity of distances. A 2025 Harvard study on romantic pursuit patterns found something fascinating. Men who reported the most intense romantic obsessions were invariably chasing women who exhibited what researchers called optimal psychological distance. Close enough to seem attainable, far enough to remain mysterious. But here's the kicker. When these women reciprocated interest, 73% of the men reported a sudden decrease in attraction. Why? Because you can't worship what you possess. Gods need altars, not bed sheets. The anima is cunning. She shapeshifts. The moment you think you've figured out what she wants, poof, she wants something else. Today, she's the free spirit who loves your stability. Tomorrow, she's the homebody who's suffocated by your presence. She's Schrodinger's goddess. Simultaneously, everything and nothing, everywhere and nowhere, until the moment you try to observe her directly. Then she collapses into disappointment. Here's a question to gnaw on your bones. What if the woman you're chasing is running not because she doesn't want you, but because she knows that catching her would kill what you really love? The chase itself. I remember sitting in a cafe in Prague, watching a street musician perform for tips. There was this woman who passed by every day at exactly 4:17 p.m. Never stopped, never smiled, just walked. But he played for her like she was Carnegie Hall. His entire day revolved around those 30 seconds. One day she stopped, dropped a coin in his case, smiled, said his music was beautiful. You'd think he'd be ecstatic, right? Wrong. I watched the light drain from his eyes like someone had pulled the plug on his soul. The next day he played different songs, badly. Without passion, within a week, he'd moved to a different corner. The Anima possession turns men into emotional contortionists, twisting themselves into whatever shape they think might finally make her stay. But here's the cosmic joke. She's not even there. She's a projection, remember? You're doing backflips for your own shadow. Kierkegaard wrote about the sickness unto death, that special kind of despair where you're desperate to be yourself but can't, or desperate not to be yourself but must. The Anima possession is both at once. You're desperate to be the man she'd love, but that man doesn't exist. You're desperate to stop being yourself because yourself clearly isn't enough, but you can't escape your own skin. The siren's paradox deepens. The more you lose yourself in pursuit of her, the less there is for her to actually love. You become a hollow man, a scarecrow stuffed with her imagined desires. And women, real women, not projections, can smell this emptiness from miles away. It smells like need. It smells like fear. It smells like a man who's outsourced his soul. There's a peculiar madness that overtakes the Anima-possessed man. He starts interpreting everything as signs. She liked his Instagram post from 3 weeks ago. She's obviously in love. She didn't respond to his text within an hour. She's obviously seeing someone else. He becomes a detective in his own delusion, gathering evidence for a case that only exists in his head. But perhaps the cruelest twist is this. Sometimes she actually does like him, the real her, not the projection, but he's so blinded by his Anima fog that he can't see the actual woman standing in front of him, trying to connect. He's too busy chasing the ghost he's superimposed over her face. I've seen men destroy perfectly good relationships because the real woman couldn't compete with the projection. She was human. She had bad days. She disagreed with him. She had her own dreams that didn't revolve around validating his existence. So he left her for the siren song of the Anima, that perfect woman who exists just beyond the next swipe, the next date, the next doomed pursuit. The siren's paradox reaches its crescendo in the digital age. Dating apps promise infinite possibility. Surely your Anima is out there, just one algorithm away, but infinity is the Anima's playground. She multiplies, fractures, scatters herself across 1,000 profiles, each one singing a slightly different tune, each one promising to be the real one, the final one, the one who'll make you whole. Men become Odysseus without a mast to tie themselves to, sailing straight into the rocks while convincing themselves the crash will feel like coming home. And somewhere in the wreckage, if you listen carefully, you can hear her laughing. Not cruelly, but with the detached amusement of a goddess watching mortals try to capture moonlight in mason jars. The siren's paradox has no resolution, only an exhaustion point. That moment when a man finally realizes he's been chasing his own tail, mistaking the dizzy spinning for progress. When predators learn to love their cages, here's a bitter joke for you. What's the difference between a man and a moth? The moth knows the flame will kill it. Pause. Still flies toward it anyway, but at least it knows. Tonight, I want to tell you about the exact moment a wolf decides to become a dog. Not the millennia-long domestication, I mean the precise second when wildness surrenders to the warm prison of someone else's approval. It happens in men every day, and Jung called it the Anima's greatest magic trick, turning hunters into pets. There's a story from the Carpathian Mountains about a wolf that fell in love with a village girl's singing. Every full moon, he'd creep to the edge of her garden, hidden in shadows, drinking her voice like stolen wine. One winter, she fell ill. Her singing stopped. The wolf, mad with loss, did something unprecedented. He walked into the village in broad daylight, lay at her door, and offered his throat to her father's knife. The father, stunned by this surrender, spared the wolf, brought him inside. The girl recovered, delighted by her new pet. She sang again, but now the wolf wore a collar. He learned to eat from a bowl, to sleep by the fire, to come when called. The other wolves would sometimes howl from the forest, calling him back, but he no longer understood their language. He'd forgotten the taste of running beneath stars, the electric thrill of the hunt, the savage freedom of belonging to no one but the moon. This is what happens when men worship the Anima. They offer their throats to the knife of domestication, thinking submission is love. I've watched it happen in real time, like watching a time-lapse of decay. Strong men who once moved through the world with the casual confidence of apex predators, suddenly discovering they need permission to exist. It starts small. She doesn't like his friends, they're immature, so he sees them less. She thinks his hobbies are childish, so he puts away the guitar, sells the motorcycle, cancels the poker game. But here's where it gets insidious. She never asked him to do any of this. The Anima doesn't make demands. She doesn't need to. The possessed man imprisons himself, each bar of the cage forged from his own desperate need for her approval. A 2024 psychological study from the University of Zurich documented what they called romantic self-annihilation syndrome. Men in the grip of Anima possession showed decreased activity in brain regions associated with self-identity and increased activity in areas linked to social conformity. In layman's terms, they literally forgot who they were, their neural pathways rewiring to optimize for her imagined desires. The researchers noted something particularly chilling. These men reported feeling more themselves, even as every objective measure showed they were becoming less individuated. The Anima had sold them their own dissolution as evolution. Let me ask you something, and I want you to sit with the discomfort. When was the last time you did something you truly wanted without first running it through the filter of what she might think? The metamorphosis is gradual, then sudden. Like boiling a frog, except the frog is convinced the rising temperature is love. He stops having opinions that might contradict hers, or worse, the opinions he imagines she holds. His yes becomes automatic, his no extinct. He develops a kind of emotional echolocation, constantly pinging his environment for her approval, adjusting his behavior based on the echoes. But here's the delicious irony. Women despise this metamorphosis. Not the real woman he's trying to please. She's usually baffled by his transformation, wondering where the man she was attracted to went. No, I mean the Anima herself. She's a goddess of the wild, remember? She fell for the wolf, not the lapdog. The moment he rolls over and shows his belly, she loses interest. There's a term in modern psychology called mate-value discrepancy, but that's too clinical for what really happens. What really happens is spiritual castration. The man cuts off his own balls and presents them on a silver platter, thinking it's a gift of devotion. The Anima yawns and looks for the next wolf to domesticate. I knew a CEO once, built his company from nothing, commanded rooms, made decisions that affected thousands. Then he met her. Within 6 months, he couldn't decide what to order for lunch without texting her first. His employees watched in horror as their leader became a nervous child seeking mommy's permission. The company faltered. She left him for a man who still had his spine. Last I heard, he was in therapy, trying to remember who he was before her. The metamorphosis of wolves into dogs is particularly tragic because it's so unnecessary. The Anima isn't asking for surrender. She's asking for engagement. She wants to dance with a wolf, not train a poodle. But the possessed man can't see this. He's too busy performing tricks for treats that never come. Schopenhauer wrote about the hedgehog's dilemma, how beings need closeness for warmth, but their spines wound each other if they get too close. The Anima-possessed man solves this by pulling out his own spines, one by one, until he's nothing but soft, vulnerable flesh. Then he wonders why he's always cold, always hurt, always bleeding. Modern culture celebrates this metamorphosis. Happy wife, happy life, they chant, as if happiness could be built on the grave of selfhood. She changed me for the better, men say, not realizing they've confused change with erasure. The Anima possession has been rebranded as romance, sold as evolution, packaged as maturity. But maturity isn't learning to heal. It's learning to run alongside someone without losing your own direction. The wolf who becomes a dog can never go back. That's the tragedy Jung understood, but politely academicized. Once you've tasted the narcotic comfort of approval, the wild tastes like terror. The forest becomes a threat instead of home. The moon stops calling your name. You're left in the peculiar purgatory of the domesticated. Too tame for the wild. Too wild for true tameness, forever pacing the fence line of what you used to be. And the Anima? She's already moved on, her eyes scanning the horizon for the next wolf to break. Not because she's cruel, but because that's her nature. She's not a destination. She's a force of transformation. The question is whether you'll let her transform you into more of yourself or less. The real tragedy isn't that wolves become dogs. It's that they think the collar is a crown, the cage is a castle, and their submission is strength. They mistake their own diminishment for growth, their own taming for love. Somewhere tonight, a man is deleting his dreams from his phone, unfollowing his passions, reshaping his soul to fit someone else's imagination of who he should be. He thinks he's becoming worthy of love. He's actually becoming worthy of pity. The metamorphosis is complete when he no longer remembers what his own howl sounded like. When the call of the wild becomes just noise. When he's grateful for the leash because at least it means he belongs to someone, even if he no longer belongs to himself. Where men learn to dance with their own shadows. Listen to the sound of rain on cemetery stones. Each drop a small goodbye to the man you thought you had to be to make her stay soft laugh in the darkness. Tonight, let me tell you about the most dangerous thing a man can discover, that the Anima was never the enemy. She was the invitation. There's an ancient Sufi story about a merchant who spent his life collecting mirrors, convinced that somewhere existed a perfect reflection that would finally show him his true face. He died surrounded by 10,000 mirrors, each one cracked, never realizing that the cracks were where the light got in. This is where our journey turns, dear listener. This is where the bitter becomes bittersweet, where the poison reveals itself as medicine, where the wound becomes the womb of something unprecedented. After the cathedral crumbles, after the siren's song fades, after the wolf remembers he was never meant to be a dog, there comes a silence. Not the silence of death, but the silence of snow falling on pine forests, the silence of possibility. The silence that exists in the space between heartbeats when a man finally stops running and turns to face what's been chasing him all along, himself. Jung knew something most men spend lifetimes avoiding. The Anima you project onto women is made from the fragments of your own soul you've declared too dangerous to love. Your tenderness, labeled weakness. Your creativity, branded as impractical. Your capacity for beauty, buried under concrete definitions of masculinity. Your intuition, exiled for the crime of not being logical enough. But here's where it gets beautifully twisted. When the projection shatters, and if you're lucky, it will shatter. You're left with all these pieces. And for the first time, you can choose to pick them up. I met a man once in a bookshop in Lisbon. Middle-aged, weathered, buying poetry for the first time in his life. His wife had left him 6 months prior. 20 years, he said. I thought she was my poetry. Turns out, I just wasn't reading any. He showed me his notebook. Clumsy verses about learning to cook for one, about the way afternoon light looked different when you actually noticed it, about discovering he enjoyed dancing badly to jazz at 3 a.m. in his empty apartment. The Anima possession breaks, you see, when a man realizes he's been begging for water while sitting beside an ocean. A 2025 study from the Jung Institute in Kusnacht found something remarkable. Men who successfully integrated their Anima projections showed increased activity in brain regions associated with creativity, emotional intelligence, and, this is the kicker, self-compassion. They literally developed new neural pathways for relating to themselves with the same fascination they'd previously reserved for their projections. Here's a whisper for your 4 a.m. thoughts. What if the love you've been desperately seeking from her was actually your own love, dressed in drag, trying to come home? The sanctuary of broken mirrors is where men go to reassemble. Not to become whole, that's another trap, another projection, but to become honestly fragmented, beautifully incomplete, courageously cracked. To discover that the light gets in through the breaks. It starts small. Cooking a meal with the same attention you'd have given to impressing her, but this time, the audience is your own hunger. Reading the books you pretended to like, discovering some of them actually speak to you when you're not performing literacy. Dancing alone in your kitchen, badly, freely, with no one to judge the rhythm but your own heartbeat. There's a profound loneliness here, but it's clean. Not the desperate loneliness of the possessed, that gnawing absence where she should be. This is the loneliness of mountains, of old trees, of things that have learned to stand alone without apology. It tastes like freedom mixed with fear, like the first breath after nearly drowning. Men in the sanctuary report strange symptoms. They start having opinions again. Real ones. Not focus grouped for her approval. They remember jokes that make them laugh instead of jokes designed to make her laugh. They discover they have a relationship with beauty that has nothing to do with possession. They can watch a sunset without needing to Instagram it for her. Can feel moved by music without wondering if she'd approve of the song. But here's the plot twist that would make Jung smile. This is when men become truly capable of love, not the desperate grasping of the possessed, but love as a choice, love as an offering. Love as two whole broken people choosing to dance together without trying to complete each other. Because the integrated anima doesn't disappear. She transforms. She stops being a projection and becomes a bridge. A bridge to your own depths, to the feminine aspects of your own soul, to the ability to meet actual women as they are, rather than as screens for your projections. I know a blacksmith who learned embroidery after his divorce. His hands, trained to bend iron, learned to bend thread. He said it was like discovering he'd been writing with only consonants his whole life, and suddenly someone handed him vowels. His work changed. The iron became more fluid, the patterns more intricate. He wasn't becoming feminine, he was becoming full. The sanctuary teaches hard lessons. That the princess was never in another castle. That the treasure you sought in her eyes was always buried in your own backyard. That the anima possession was just a very expensive, very painful way of avoiding the magnificent terror of being fully yourself. Some men can't handle the sanctuary. They run back to the projections, fine, new screens for the old movie. But some stay. They learn to befriend their own shadows, to dance with their own depths, to romance their own souls with the same intensity they once reserved for their projections. And then, only then, something miraculous happens. They meet a woman, a real woman, not a projection. And for the first time, they can actually see her, not as a goddess, not as a savior, not as the missing piece of their soul, but as what she actually is. Another human being, equally broken, equally beautiful, equally navigating the strange waters of being alive. The sanctuary of broken mirrors offers no promises except this. You'll never be the same. You'll carry the scars of your projections like a map of where not to go again. But you'll also carry something else. The quiet strength of a man who's learned to mother his own soul, to father his own dreams, to be both the question and the answer in the conversation of becoming. Some call it individuation, some call it growing up. I call it the moment when a man stops worshipping at the altar of his projections and starts building a home in his own bones. The Anima watches from the shadows. No longer a siren, but a teacher. No longer a goddess, but a guide, smiling at another student who finally understood the lesson. The love you seek is seeking you, and it's been living in your chest all along, waiting for you to stop looking elsewhere and finally come home. And the strange resurrection of men who bury their projections with honor. I want to tell you about the most beautiful funeral I ever attended. No one died. Not literally, but something was buried that day. Something that needed to rest. The mourner, a man I'd known through his possession and out the other side, had built a small pyre in his backyard. On it, he placed letters never sent, screenshots of conversations that existed only in his head, a journal full of fantasies about a woman who was half real, half fiction. He lit the fire as the sun set, and I swear I saw something rise from the smoke, not a phoenix, but a man, finally willing to greet his own resurrection. This is the final mystery Jung hinted at, but never fully spoke. When you properly bury your projections, something unexpected grows from the grave. Not the old obsession reborn, but something stranger. The capacity to love without worship, to desire without desperation, to be alone without loneliness eating you from the inside like termites in cathedral wood. There's a tale from medieval Persia about a garden where only dead gods could bloom. Merchants would bring their broken idols, their failed talismans, their outlived obsessions, and plant them like seeds. The garden keeper, a mad mystic who spoke in riddles, promised nothing except that something would grow. Most laughed and left. But those who stayed, who watered their dead gods with tears and patience, witnessed the impossible. From each burial site grew flowers that smelled like freedom. The anima, when properly laid to rest, becomes compost for something unprecedented. But here's what nobody tells you about this garden. You have to tend it. You can't just bury your projections and walk away. You have to visit the grave, not with flowers, but with curiosity. What grows from the spot where you buried your desperate need for her approval? What springs from the earth where you planted your addiction to external validation? I'll tell you what grows, though each man's garden blooms differently. Where obsession is buried, observation blooms, the ability to see beauty without needing to possess it, like a man who can finally enjoy sunsets without trying to trap them in bottles. Where projection is planted, perspective flowers, the capacity to see women as complete human beings, not screens for your unlived life. Their flaws become features. Their complexity becomes fascinating rather than threatening. Where desperate need decomposes, quiet strength takes root. Not the brittle strength of suppression, but the flexible power of bamboo, bending without breaking, alone without emptiness. A 2020 phenomenological study from the Institute of Depth Psychology in Zurich documented what they called post-projection integration syndrome. Men who had successfully worked through anima possession showed something remarkable. They developed what researchers termed emotional multilingualism, the ability to speak the language of both masculine and feminine aspects of psyche without losing their center. But more interesting than the clinical findings were the interviews. Man after man described the same phenomenon. Life became more vivid. Colors seemed brighter. Not the false brightness of infatuation, but the steady glow of reality properly witnessed. Food tasted more complex. Music carried more layers. It was as if burning the projection had cleared smoke from their eyes. Here's my final question for you, posed like a key to a door you didn't know existed. What would you become if you stopped trying to become worthy of love and realized you were worthy of your own becoming? One man told me he started painting after his projection died. Not well. That wasn't the point. He painted the way crows collect shiny things, with joy divorced from purpose. His ex-wife visited once, saw the canvases covering his apartment, and asked if he was painting them for someone. "Yes," he said, "for the man I'm becoming." She didn't understand. That was okay. He wasn't painting for her understanding anymore. The garden where dead gods bloom is tended by men who've learned the ultimate paradox. You become most attractive when you stop trying to attract. You become most worthy of love when you stop auditioning for it. You become most yourself when you stop performing yourself for an audience that was only ever in your head. But let's not pretend this garden is paradise. It's not. It's a working garden, full of compost and worms and the smell of decay transforming into soil. Some days, You'll want to dig up what you buried, try to revive the old projections. They were painful, yes, but at least they were familiar. At least they gave structure to the chaos of being human. The garden asks more of you than the possession ever did. The possession just wanted your soul. The garden wants your participation in your own becoming. I know men who've built entire lives in these gardens. They date differently now, not hunting for the perfect anima to project upon, but curious about the actual human sitting across from them. They love differently too, not the desperate clutching of the possessed, but the open-handed offering of those who've learned they can't lose what's truly theirs. Some marry, some don't. Some find partners who tend their own gardens nearby. Some discover that solitude, properly inhabited, is its own form of intimacy. All report the same thing. Life after projection is both harder and richer than life during possession. Like the difference between watching a movie about climbing a mountain and actually feeling the stone beneath your fingers, the air thinning in your lungs, the view earned with your own effort. Jung knew that individuation, that $10 word for becoming who you actually are, requires sacrifice. But he was too polite to say what kind. You have to sacrifice your addiction to being saved. You have to burn your fantasies of completion through another. You have to bury your dead gods with your own hands and trust that what grows will be worth the loss. The garden where dead gods bloom isn't for everyone. Some men prefer the familiar agony of projection to the unknown territory of integration. They'll chase new animas until they die, each one a variation on the same theme, each one promising to be different, each one ending the same way. That's their choice. The garden doesn't judge. It just waits. But for those who enter, who plant their projections and tend what grows, something unprecedented blooms. The capacity to be alone without being lonely, to love without losing themselves, to desire without desperation, to dance with the anima instead of being devoured by her. In the end, the anima possession was never the disease. It was the symptom. The disease was the belief that you were incomplete, that somewhere outside yourself lived the missing piece. The cure isn't finding the piece. It's realizing you were never missing anything. You were just holding the map upside down. The garden blooms at night, when former slaves to projection water their strange new flowers and realize they've become gardeners of their own souls. Not perfect, not complete, but real, finally real. Tending a beauty that belongs to no one but themselves and therefore can be shared without fear of loss. This is Jung's final gift, wrapped in academic language but burning with mystic fire. The anima will possess the man who worships her, yes, but the man who buries his worship with honor, who tends the grave until it becomes a garden, who learns to dance with his projections instead of being danced by them, that man becomes possessed by something far more dangerous than any projection: himself.